There are five very common valid argument types, valid argument forms that I would like for you to know for this class. I'd like you to know them, to be able to identify them, perhaps even to make your own argument in that form. You will see this discussion beginning on page 133 in our green textbook, The Morrow and Weston. And I would like for you to spend some time with these five on page 134, modus ponens and modus tollens. On page 135, hypothetical syllogism. 136, disjunctive syllogism. And on pages 137 to 138, dilemma. In addition to these pages, I've also linked to some videos. There's videos about all of the first four. I couldn't find a good video about dilemma, so I'll talk a little bit more about dilemma here in this video. And as always, please reach out to me anytime with questions. All right, so let's talk about the first one, modus ponens. Again, these are deductive arguments for an argument to be valid or invalid, or for that matter, sound or unsound. We were talking exclusively about deductive arguments. So all of these are deductive types, deductive forms. Modus ponens will always take this form. If P, then Q. P. Well, thus Q. Here's an example. If it is raining, then the sidewalks are wet. It is raining, thus the sidewalks are wet. Notice if we switched the second premise and the conclusion, we would no longer have a valid argument, right? If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If it is raining, then the sidewalks are wet. The sidewalks are wet. Well, therefore it is raining. No, that would be an invalid argument. And we're going to talk about mistakes like that more later in this class. Modus tollens will always take this form. If P, then Q. Not Q, therefore not P. Here's a great example that I love from Sherlock Holmes. If the thief had been a stranger, then the dog would have barked. But the dog didn't bark. Therefore, the thief wasn't a stranger. Let's talk briefly about hypothetical syllogism and disjunctive syllogism. A hypothetical syllogism. If P, then Q. If Q, then R. Thus, if P, then R. This one might seem at first glance a little more complicated than the first two, but this is the only one of your five common valid argument types that are all going to be if-then statements. That is, they're all conditional or hypothetical statements. So I think that really it should be pretty easy to identify. So if I ask on an exam, for instance, to identify what form of an argument it is, if you see all if-thens in the premises and the conclusion, then you're dealing with a hypothetical syllogism. Here's an example. If I go to medical school, I will study oncology. If I study oncology, it should be oncology, not ontology, I will become an oncologist. Thus, if I go to medical school, I will become an oncologist. How about a disjunctive syllogism? I think disjunctive syllogism is actually one of the easiest to recognize and also to work with. It begins with an or statement, that is, a disjunction, P or Q. Then we eliminate one of those possibilities, not P. Well, therefore Q. Andrea or Fern will mow the lawn, Andrea will not mow the lawn. Thus, Fern will mow the lawn. Dilemma. This is the most complicated of the forms. Nevertheless, I don't think it's going to be too hard for you to identify it. Remember, a dilemma is the only valid argument form that begins with a disjunction and ends with a disjunction. The conclusion is itself an or statement. And in the middle, you've got two hypotheticals, two conditional statements. P or Q. If P, then R. If Q, then S. Well, therefore, R or S. Paris or Berlin will host the Summer Olympics. If Paris hosts, the French economy will flourish for years to come. If Berlin hosts, the German economy will flourish. Therefore, the French or German economy will flourish. Study well, and please reach out to me with any questions.